How to Increase Your Happiness and Well-Being Through Gratitude. This is the second edition in my How to Flourish blog and newsletter. There are two highlights to this blog. First, why gratitude exercises are so effective for increasing our well-being. And second, I'll outline simple yet effective gratitude exercises that you can implement right away, daily, weekly, and less frequently. Let's start off by getting clear on what gratitude is. Gratitude is the emotion of thankfulness. It involves showing appreciation for the kindness you receive and a readiness to show kindness in return. It's a social emotion involving mutual reciprocation between people, which helps build relationships. It's a virtuous character skill which is beneficial for our character development, well-being, and relations with others. It can be directed at something specific, such as a generous action by a person, or at something general, such as life's opportunities. What are the benefits of gratitude? Well, there's a substantial body of research showing that practicing gratitude has a significant and lasting impact on our well-being and even promotes human flourishing. Gratitude exercises, in which we express or receive gratitude verbally or through writing, can increase our experiences of happiness and other positive emotions, reduce the duration and frequency of depressive episodes, and help us cope better with adversity by building our resilience to stress and trauma. Practicing gratitude is particularly beneficial for our psychological well-being and for social connection, which is a determinant of individual and collective well-being. Developing gratitude as a habit can build long-term social connectedness. It's positively linked with something called pro-social behavior. That is, positive and helpful behavior which promotes social acceptance and friendship. Gratitude can strengthen bonds and consolidate relationships and supports group integration. There's research showing that in cultures where greater levels of gratitude are expressed, reciprocity and harmony within and between social groups is more likely. And I've linked in the blog a conversation I have with the Associate Director of the Harvard Study of Adult Development, Mark Schulz, a podcast conversation. That study is the world's longest ever study on happiness. I've linked that in relation to the profound benefits of social connection for our well-being, which I've just mentioned there. Let's look at some notable research findings on gratitude exercises. Studies have yielded striking results. Two noteworthy research interventions come from positive psychology, the scientific study of human flourishing. In one intervention, participants wrote down 3 things that went well every day for 1 week and what caused them to go well. 1 month after the study, the participants reported an increase in happiness and a decrease in depressive symptoms, which continued for 6 months. I describe how you can do this exercise later in this video and in the blog. In another highly effective intervention, participants wrote a letter of gratitude to someone who had been kind to them and read it to them in person. Participants reported a boost in happiness and a decrease in depressive symptoms after 1 week, which continued for a month. The positive changes within that month were even greater than the changes were for the participants who wrote down 3 things that went well during the month following that exercise. More recent research has shown that long-form gratitude exercises, like writing a gratitude letter, produce higher well-being than writing a list of things we're grateful for. And this may be among the reasons why writing a gratitude letter was more impactful in the month following that intervention. Now, interestingly, recent research has also shown that receiving gratitude is sometimes even more powerful than expressing it. So, if you're the recipient of a gratitude letter, you might benefit even more than the person who's written it to you. So, gratitude practices that involve reciprocation between people, such as writing a gratitude letter to someone and reading it to them, offer significant benefits for the well-being of both parties. And I describe how to write a gratitude letter later in this video. So, why is practicing gratitude important then? Well, our evolutionary history has led to our minds focusing more on negative features of our environments and our lives than positive ones. For example, we are more attentive to and reactive to danger than safety, to harmful things than harmless things, and to criticism than compliments. We also learn from negative experiences like these more quickly. Now, this is for good evolutionary reasons. It's beneficial for our survival to be more attentive and reactive to things that could pose a threat to us than those that don't, and to quickly learn from potentially threatening things to avoid them in the future. So we've evolved to have a neurological bias towards negative stimuli. This is known as negativity bias. Now, while this has a powerful impact on our psychology and our lives, such as on our attention, outlook, moods, memories, and interactions with other people, we can develop skills to counteract its potency. One way we can counter this is by cultivating a more positive outlook. And this can be done by practicing being positive, and research shows that practicing gratitude is one of the most effective ways to do this. Gratitude encourages us to focus on the positive aspects of something, a memory, social interaction, or even an experience of adversity. Now, research on gratitude also draws attention to two important points about happiness. First, it's buildable, and second, it is to some degree within our control. And these points were powerfully made by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, one of the founding psychologists of positive psychology and widely known as the father of flow after his pioneering research that identified the flow state, the psychological state of optimal experience and performance. And I'll write a blog on flow soon and how to get into it. In his magnum opus, his 1990 book Flow, Csikszentmihalyi writes the following: "Happiness is not something that happens. It is not the result of good fortune or random chance. It is not something that money can buy or power command. It does not depend on outside events, but rather on how we interpret them. Happiness, in fact, is a condition that must be prepared for, cultivated, and defended privately by each person. People who learn to control inner experience will be able to determine the quality of their lives, which is as close as any of us can come to being happy." Now, this point about how we interpret events that Csikszentmihalyi makes is especially pertinent to gratitude. Gratitude practices help us interpret our experiences more positively, focusing on aspects of them for which we can feel grateful. And this can help us overcome our negativity bias. All right, so let's look at some do-it-yourself gratitude exercises. These are incredibly effective for increasing our happiness and well-being, yet they can be quickly and easily implemented. The exercises I'm going to describe now start with the quickest, and they progressively involve a greater time commitment. However, they also progressively become more effective for improving our well-being based on what research has shown about them. So let's start off with an exercise you can do once a week. For a weekly gratitude exercise, try this. Think back over the past week and write down 5 things you're grateful for. In a 10-week study, the participants who did this every week reported feeling better about their lives, had greater optimism about the week ahead, spent significantly more time exercising, reported fewer physical issues, and slept better and for longer. Now, you can be very brief in what you write down. Study participants wrote simple things like waking up this morning and the generosity of friends. I recommend writing specific things you can visualize, focus on and savor them, and visualize them as you write them. Research on gratitude since this study suggests that these actions can increase the positive impact that written gratitude exercises have on our well-being. Do this at the end of the week during a time you can focus and reflect on the week that's just passed. For example, you might write about that gift you received from a loved one, reflecting on the thought they must have put into it, the effort they made, and what the gift shows about how much they value and love you. Or you might write about a specific achievement you're proud of, focusing on the skills you're grateful to have built that got you there, the people who supported you on the way, and the experiences that you've had as a result of it. But if you're short on time, just write down 5 brief things. That 10-week study was co-led by the world's leading researcher on gratitude, Robert Emmons, and I've linked several of his works in the blog. Right, now let's look at a gratitude exercise you can do every day, a daily practice. Now, the study I mentioned earlier, in which participants wrote down 3 things that went well and what caused them to go well, is known as the 3 blessings, 3 good things, or what went well exercise. If you want a simple way to remember it, just use www. Now, do it as follows. Find a time when you'll be able to reflect on what you're writing. I recommend picking a time outside the busyness of your working day. So either first thing in the morning or after your working day has ended, when you're winding down for the night. You could also do this during a break in the day. There's no good reason to think you can't. Just make sure you're able to concentrate and you're not cramming this between other tasks, so your mind's just going to jump straight from this to something else. So you're actually, savouring the moment, focusing on it so it's sinking in as something you're going to remember and focus on. Now, write down 3 things that went well on that day, or if you're doing this in the morning, the previous day, and most importantly, why they went well. For the second part of this, you're looking to identify specific causal factors that made them go well. Be as specific as possible, visualizing the memory of what went well as you're recalling it and writing about it. You can write down anything from everyday experiences to rare accomplishments. For example, you might write the following. What went well? I had a fun conversation with my best friend and helped them figure out how to navigate a difficult meeting they have with their boss tomorrow. Why? I listened attentively to them. I made plenty of time for our conversation in the middle of a busy working day. I cared deeply for them. I thought carefully about the advice I gave them, and I focused on their needs rather than offering advice just based on my own experiences. Now, the power of this is really felt during the second part, the why. This exercise encourages you to focus on your character virtues and how you're using them to promote good in the world, for example, by improving your life or the lives of others. In that example I just gave, you see virtues such as patience, care, love, attentiveness, generosity, empathy, and selflessness, and they all contributed to that going well. And these are virtues that we usually ignore when we reflect on our everyday experiences. Now, you can also do this exercise without focusing on character virtues, and it can still be highly effective, as effective. There's no reason you have to just focus on character virtues. For example, you could do the following. What went well? I went for a lovely evening walk in my local park. Why? There was a stunning sunset. I was surrounded by birdsong. I couldn't hear any traffic. I live close to a beautiful park. It was a warm summer evening. I left my phone at home to take a break from technology. I bumped into my neighbours and love being part of a community where this often happens. Now, here you're focusing on general things to be grateful for, which are often ignored, such as the beauty of a sunset, the tranquility of birdsong, and the restorative power of spending time in nature. You're also focusing on things that don't focus on your character virtues, such as living in a friendly community and being grateful for that. Now, remember the power of this daily exercise. The study participants who did this every night for just 1 week reported higher levels of happiness and lower levels of depressive symptoms, which persisted for 6 months. I did this exercise at the end of almost every day for about 18 months between 2019 and 2021. It took me about 10 minutes in the evening to do this every day. And I just want to emphasize that's how little time you need to commit to doing an exercise that can have a highly effective impact on your well-being. And I found, like many others, this really worked. There wasn't a good reason to stop doing it. I stopped doing it because I went to Belize the summer of 2021, and immediately upon returning, I moved house and started a new job. That was all planned. It wasn't spontaneous and bad news or anything. I planned to do it, but I was having such a great time in Belize. I wanted to, stay there as long as I could. So came straight back, highly jet lagged, moved house, started a new job. I think literally the next day, maybe 2 days later, push 3, and this practice got lost in the wayside of going to Belize and having a great time in Belize. And I've linked in the blog a talk I gave while in Belize on how to use gratitude to increase your happiness. But I also felt that I need to do this exercise anymore, because through doing it for a long time, 18 months, that had helped me cultivate a lens of gratitude through which I'd come to experience life in a more positive way. And I'm grateful, if you excuse the pun, to maintain that still today. It's kind of often just a natural, intuitive response I have to my life and events that I experience, even moments of adversity. But I want to emphasize here that, and this is why I said need in inverted commas, engaging in effective gratitude exercises is highly beneficial for your well-being, even when you don't feel you need to do them. Okay, these are great things to do regardless of whether you feel you really need to build your happiness and trying to reduce depressive symptoms at the moment. These are great to do for your well-being regardless of what situation you're in life right now. And since writing this blog over the past week, I've returned to doing this exercise at the end of every day. And so I'm making this now another New Year's resolution. January hasn't ended yet, so it's early enough in the year that I can do that. Now, a reason this exercise is so powerful might be because it involves constructing a narrative about why we're grateful for something. And I've linked in the blog an excellent overview of recent research on the science of gratitude by Andrew Huberman, who of course you all know, have heard of, probably listened to his podcast. In that, he describes research showing that constructing a narrative is one of the most important features of an effective gratitude practice. If we were to just do the first part of the exercise, the what, it wouldn't involve a narrative. It'd just be a list of things that went well. But the why adds narrative structure to it. Okay, there you're saying something went well because of certain causal factors. Now, you could go a step further and emphasize the narrative. So to think about the examples I just gave, you could write out the causal factors with a clearer narrative structure rather than just writing a set of reasons. So the second example I gave, here's how you might write that out with a more clear narrative structure. Why did it go well? It was a warm summer evening in my local beautiful park. The sunset was stunning, with hues of purple, orange, yellow and blue. I was free from the grip of technology, my phone and laptop far from reach back at home. I felt the homeliness of my friendly community when I bumped into my neighbours as I passed the playground. As I walked, I noticed I couldn't hear the sound of a single car. All I could hear was birdsong. Now, I want to just emphasise that it's not necessary to do it in this elaborate narrative way. The participants in the randomised controlled trial who reported positive impacts on their well-being for 6 months when they did what went well weren't required to write the responses in this way. And you're already giving this exercise narrative structure by adding the why to it. But if you like, you could try this more elaborative way of writing responses to see if it works more effectively. I'm now doing that when I do this daily exercise, but I'm also doing that to practice, creative writing, because I value building that skill. So you can try that if you want to, but you don't have to do it that way. Okay, so far we've looked at weekly and daily exercises. So let's now look at one-off exercises. Another powerful exercise which involves a much clearer and detailed narrative structure, and you can do as often or as little as you like, is known as the gratitude visit or the gratitude letter. Now, given the time commitment and logistical requirements to do this, this will very likely be an exercise you do much less frequently than once a week, and probably much less frequently than once a week, and probably much less frequently than even once a month. But let's look at it nonetheless. Now, you'll need to set aside at least an hour to do this, and several hours if you complete all the steps that I'm going to describe. I've done this once, and it took me about 2 hours to draft the letter, about another hour to rewrite it nicely by hand as a letter that I could give to the recipient, so they could keep it as a gift, and about another hour to read it to them and to discuss it with them afterwards. So that's about a 4-hour commitment in total. But you could do this in half the time. Say if you wrote a shorter letter using a computer and printed it out rather than writing it by hand. I wrote quite a long letter when I did this. Now remember that this is a one-off exercise rather than a daily or weekly practice, so the total time might actually be less than the cumulative total of doing what went well every day. I mentioned that takes me about 10 minutes a day to do, so that's a little over an hour a week. It took me about 4 hours to complete a gratitude visit, which is less than the total time over a month that I used to spend doing what went well. So if you were to do this once a month, it'd likely take you less time than doing what went well every day. And a month would be a good general timestamp if you wanted to, say, calendar this for how often you wanted to do it. A month is a good time point for how often you do this, because the participants in the first randomized controlled trial on this reported a boost in happiness and a decrease in depressive symptoms after 1 week, which continued for 1 month. You might find this the most effective exercise because, as I mentioned earlier, research has shown that writing about gratitude long form, for example in a letter, produces higher well-being than writing a gratitude list. All right, now I've divided how you do this, into 5 stages. First stage, think of someone in your life whose actions improved your life but you've never fully thanked. Okay, this should be someone who, to quote Martin Seligman, did something or said something that changed your life for the better. Seligman puts it that way in his 2011 book, Flourish. Now, Seligman co-led the original study on this exercise, which I've linked in the blog, and is another of the founding psychologists behind positive psychology. The person you're going to write this to should also be someone you could in principle meet up with, so you could read out the letter to them. So it could, for example, be a friend for that time they let you stay in their apartment for a month while you're between jobs, or a former colleague whose advice led to you landing the career you'd always wanted, or a parent for encouraging you to take music lessons when you were young, without which you wouldn't have gone on to maintain a hobby you love or become a professional musician. Okay, think about examples of people you could write a letter to. Someone that you, whose actions improved your life but you've never fully thanked. Second step, write a gratitude letter to them. Write about what they did and why you're grateful to them. Be specific about what they did and how their actions improved your life. Seligman recommends that the letter's about 300 words long. That's about 2/3 of an A4 page of typed text at size 12 font. Feel free to write much more. I certainly did. But bear in mind that this will also make the fourth and fifth steps I'm going to describe, which are optional but highly recommended, more time consuming. Just make sure that the letter is long enough that you're able to describe in sufficient detail what the person did and why you're grateful. All right, third step. Deliver the letter to them in person. Okay, don't send it via email or in the post. That's straightforward. Now, the final two steps are optional, but if you really want to experience the full potential this exercise offers for improving your well-being, not just your well-being, but their well-being too, because remember, the recipients of gratitude practices have been shown to often experience even greater impacts of the well-being than the person expressing it. Do the following two steps if you really want to experience the full potential this exercise offers. Fourth step, read the letter to them in person. That's right, start to finish, word for word. Now, Seligman recommends calling the recipient ahead of delivering the letter and telling them you'd like to visit them, but being, quote, vague about the purpose of the meeting, because this exercise is much more fun when it is a surprise, end quote. Now, that might be so, but for some recipients of these letters, you're going to want to give them a heads up, or you might want to consider giving them a heads up, because this exercise is emotionally intense for both parties. All right, so think carefully about whether you want to just spring this on them. Also, think carefully about where you're going to read this and make sure you planned enough time to do it. If you or they are likely to break into tears, or both of you, which of course is possible with a deeply emotional letter, for example, a busy cafe during a short afternoon break from work in the middle of the week might not be the best choice of location or time, right? Okay, fifth and final step, discuss the letter with them. Ask yourself, which parts of the letter most resonated for you and for them? What was the significance of the action described in the letter to each of you? How do you feel about each other? Discuss the letter and your feelings with each other. As I've said, this exercise is intense, but remember, writing a letter to someone to whom you feel grateful and reading it to them has been shown to make us feel happier and less depressed after 1 week and lasts for 1 month. The positive changes within that month have been shown to be even higher than in the What Went Well exercise, and the well-being benefits have been shown to be even greater for the recipient. So, by doing this, you're taking steps to improve your own well-being and the well-being of someone who did something kind for you even more. What better way is there to show your gratitude? There's no reason you couldn't do all of the exercises I've described here. My recommendation is to do What Went Well daily, the end of a day, or the start of a day. Well, any time of the day, really. You've got the general description I gave earlier. And once you've turned that into a daily habit, then do a gratitude visit as an additional exercise. That's what I did, and it worked really well. And it's a manageable way you can do these practices. I don't recommend committing to doing the gratitude visit regularly, like putting it in your calendar for once a week. I'm going to write a letter this week and next week and next week. Just do it once. See how it goes. Take your time with it. Try it out. Reflect on how it went. And then do it again with someone else if and when you feel ready to do so. All right, the takeaway then. Effective gratitude exercises have a significant and lasting positive impact on our well-being, yet they can be implemented quickly and easily. When we engage in gratitude exercises that involve others as the recipients of our gratitude, the exercise can benefit them too, sometimes even more than ourselves. Long-form written gratitude exercises are more effective than writing gratitude lists. Constructing a narrative when we express gratitude, for example, as we write about what we're grateful for, makes the practice more effective. Try some or all of the gratitude exercises I've described here and track how they impact your well-being over time. And if you want some reliable ways to do that, I've linked in the blog gratitude measures that you can use. Which gratitude practices have you done, and how did you find them? Did you try any of these? And if so, what impact did they have on you? If you did a gratitude visit, how did it impact the person you read your gratitude letter to? I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments or any other thoughts you have about gratitude. You can also read this blog on my Substack page, substack.com/@drjohnbeale. And you can subscribe on LinkedIn as well. I'm on LinkedIn, again, @drjohnbeale, and access all of this on my website, drjohnbeale.com. Thank you, and enjoy practicing gratitude.